Oh man, this is a good one. Coming up next, an icon tells the story of a classic that's really going to surprise you. Very entertaining story here. Today's all-time hit came to him after he sat next to a famous actress in a restaurant and she began to cuss like a sailor. She was telling dirty joke after dirty joke after dirty joke. Now, he was no prude, but he was shocked regardless. All of a sudden, one of the most familiar lyrics of the 80s came into his head, and within a few minutes, he was jotting down the entire song. Now, his musical collaborator made some tweaks the next day, and these guys recorded it. It became a #1 smash. Who is the actress, and what was the change that made this a hit? Find out next on an exclusive interview on Professor of Rock. Hey, music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. You know, if other passengers in your car or was asking you to turn down your music, you're going to love this channel of deep musical nostalgia. Happens to me all the time. Subscribe below right now, click the bell, click the red button so you know when our latest come out. So it's time for another edition of our series Revelations. This is where featured artists take us for a deep dive into their greatest songs and their greatest albums. Insight you really won't get anywhere else. Great stories. Today we're going in depth with a member of the most successful duo of the rock era, John Oates, who used to be part of Daryl Hall and John Oates. Now they're broken up, unfortunately. You know, if you were ever to make a list of the most iconic lyrics of the neon decade, the 80s, "Watch out, boy, she'll chew you up," that would be near the top of the list for sure. Watch out, boy, she'll chew you up. Oh, here she comes. That exact line came to John Oates at a hoity-toity restaurant in New York City when a famous model/actress came in and sat at his table. John Oates, he's going to tell you the story along with a few other stories of their other huge hits in a moment. And I also want to elaborate on the song's impact and solve the mystery of who this woman is that inspired such a cutthroat song, because he doesn't really tell us, but I figure it out. Man, it's such a heartbreaker that we no longer have this duo, but at least we still have the music. So let's get into it. Hey, music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. You know, if you want to know the stories behind the soundtrack of your life, the greatest songs in history, straight from the legends, you're going to love this channel. Make sure to subscribe below right now and click the bell so you never miss out on our daily content. So it's time for another edition of our series Revelations, where featured artists take us for a deep dive into their greatest songs and their greatest albums. And they give us insight that you will not find anywhere else. Today, we're going to go in depth with a member of the most successful duo of the rock era. Talking about John Oates of Hall & Oates on their 1982 #1 smash, Maneater. Oh, here she comes. She's a man-eater. If you were to ever make a list of the most iconic lyrics of the neon decade, "Watch out, boy, she'll chew you up," it'd have to be near at the top of the list. Oh, here she comes. Watch out, boy, she'll chew you up. And that exact line came to John Oates at a hoity-toity restaurant in New York City when a famous model actress came and sat at his table. John Oates will tell you the story, and then I want to elaborate a little further on the song's impact as well as solve the mystery of who this mystery model woman is that inspired such a cutthroat song. Here's John Oates on the story. And as we go into this, I want to thank our sponsor, Zenni Eyewear, the glasses that I jam every single day. Make sure to go to Zenni.com frequently, as they always have a deal that they're running, and get hundreds of pairs of glasses starting at only $6.95. You heard me right, $6.95. And get a quality pair of frames for less than a vinyl record. Check it out today. Here's John Oates. Let's talk about a couple songs from this album. I see these albums and they just remind me of childhood with my dad, hearing these songs on the turntable. It's great when you go to the record store, bring home a new record, because I grew up in a small town in Idaho with not a lot to do. And so when he bring home a new record,
you dive in.
Oh yeah, it was phenomenal. But Maneater, what a great song. #1 for 4 weeks, #6 in the UK. That was your biggest song in the UK. And you wrote a prototype of Maneater. And in your book, it talked about you were inspired, again, at a restaurant, a place called Mary Lou's. You met a woman that sat across from you. Tell me that story.
Well, Mary Lou's was a hip hangout in the 80s. musicians, actors, models, all the hip downtown kind of thing. And a very good friend of ours named Tommy Barata ran it, and his sister Mary Lou ran it as well. And everyone would end up hanging out there late at night, having great Italian food and wine, and it was just a great place to be. And a very, very popular and beautiful model came in, and she was just, she was really gorgeous. And she was friends with a lot of the people at the table where I was sitting, sat down, and she began to talk. And every third word out of her mouth was a curse word. She was telling dirty jokes. It was very kind of, her coarse vocabulary was a high contrast to her great beauty. Let's put it that way. And as I sat across from her, I thought to myself, man, like a girl like that would chew you up and spit you out. And I went, boom. I went, oh, okay, wait a minute. There's something here. And I walked home that night and I started singing, oh, here she comes.
Oh, here she comes. Watch out, boy, she'll chew you up.
She'll chew you up, spit you out. And then I started playing around with it. I had just come back from Jamaica, so I was kind of doing the reggae thing. And I played it as a reggae song. And it sounds really good as a reggae song. I do it solo as a reggae song a lot.
He's a man. Oh, here she comes. Watch out, boy, gonna chew you up. Oh, here she comes.
And played it for Daryl, and he loved the idea of the chorus. And he said, but I don't know the groove. He said, let's try a different groove. And he came up with the more the Motown feel, the gonk, 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 gonk. And we just wrote a verse based on that. And of course that led us to, the chorus evolved into that style.
And I understand that you showed it to Edgar Winter at first because you were doing some writing with him.
I was writing with Edgar Winter. We were trying to write. We weren't very successful. I think our two worlds were, doing this. But he didn't seem to react to it. I played it for him and he was like, yeah, well, whatever. And I was like, okay. And then, hey, just how it works.
Well, I remember sitting down with Lamont Dozier a few years ago and did a long interview with him, like a 3-hour, and talked about every Four Tops and Supremes and all the songs great songs he wrote. And he told me when he first heard Maneater, he thought you guys were covering You Can't Hurry Love. He was excited.
Same way Michael Jackson used to feel, I can't go for that. Hey, yeah. You know what I mean?
But he was way excited. He said, he's like, man, I was hoping they did. And he said, I just love that song.
Yeah. Well, there was no doubt that that was a Motown-inspired feel. There's no doubt about it.
That song, Charlie DeChan, another great saxophone solo on it. As I understand it, as Daryl came in and you guys converged and started putting the finishing touches on it, that the lyrics were also about the lady killer there, but also about New York City in the 80s and greed, spoiled riches, that kind of thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that song to me epitomizes my take and my experience on New York City in the 80s. It was a city, it was a city on fast forward. It was pedal to the metal, all that stupid saying, the guy who dies with the most toys wins. It was the Wolf of Wall Street mentality. More is more, bigger is better. I think that song to me epitomizes and kind of crystallizes that thing that was happening in New York in the 80s. City is the man-eater in that song. It's a metaphor for New York City, really.
One-on-One, I want to ask you about that. I know that Daryl wrote that, but I love the harmonies on that. It's always been one of my favorite songs and one of my favorite harmonies that you guys ever did. What do you remember about recording that? Anything stand out?
We recorded it just like we recorded all the other songs. We were out, we set up in a circle in the room, looked at each other, and played. Every album we made in the 80s, except for, I would say, when we get to Big Bam Boom, that began to take on a different production type approach. But for the most part, Voices, Private Eyes, and H2O. We had a great 80s band that kept getting better, and we would tour, and the band kept getting tighter, and we'd go right from the tour straight into the studio once we had some songs. And, so the band was well-oiled, great players, great engineers, Bob Clearmountain and Neil Kernan, great studios, it was just all working, man. It was all working.
One on One was just one of those great, slow, Quiet Storm ballads that you guys did.
Yeah, it's great. It's a great song.
Say It Isn't So, I've always felt like was one of the most underappreciated songs that you guys did. It was a massive hit. I mean, it went to number 2 for 4 weeks. It was behind Say, Say, Say. Any other week, it probably would have been number 1, but that was just a great arrangement. And I understand that was developed in the studio.
Daryl and I have a very unique way of doing background vocals. People have always commented over the years, musicians and songwriters and people that I work with always say, man, I love your background vocals. I love your background vocals. It's just a thing, it's a Philadelphia thing. It's a certain way of singing. And what a lot of people, I think, don't understand, or not, maybe they don't catch, is that a lot of times our background vocals are actually our chorus. That's kind of a unique stylistic thing that we do. You look at Out of Touch, or even Maneater for that matter, Say It Isn't So. I mean, the backgrounds are the hook. So we don't treat backgrounds like we don't bury them back in the mix. We put them way up front, almost like a lead vocal.
Yeah, well, and Say It Isn't So was kind of a different production for you guys.
Well, here again, it was the 80s. It was that lean eighth note kind of feel that was very popular in the 80s, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. It's the eighth note thing that was, was really a signature musical theme of the 80s.
Well, so when I did that interview with John, I had to rush through it a little bit due to time, but I was able to glean some more info about the making of this incredible song. After it didn't work out with Edgar Winter and it was that reggae thing, Daryl Hall would say that he advised John Oates to change the groove to a Motown thing. And then John Oates sang it for their frequent collaborator at the time, Sarah Allen. So he sang that all familiar, "Oh, here she comes, watch out, boy, she'll chew you up. Oh, here she comes, she's a man-eater."
Oh, here she comes, she's a man-eater.
And apparently he had some other words that would keep the chorus going. And she immediately said, drop that stuff in the end and just go, "She's a man-eater," and then stop. Oates thought it was crazy. I mean, he was used to singing it with that filler line, but then he thought, I don't know. He realized after a little while that she was right. It made all the difference in the song. This was great about collaboration.
Oh, here she comes. She's a man-eater.
Oh man, that music video, such a classic. It was a mainstay on early MTV. It opens with a woman walking down a red staircase and the band playing in a dimly lit studio with partial light falling down on them. The band members all step in and out of the light to sing their parts. And a young woman in a short party dress is shown in fade in and fade out shots along with that scary black Jaguar that goes with the line, "The woman is wild, a she-cat tamed by the purr of a jaguar."
The woman is wild, she can't tamed by the purr of a jaguar.
The song, it's had a big impact in our culture since it topped the charts for 4 weeks in '82. The song was used in the 1999 movie Runaway Bride. It was also on the soundtrack there. In the movie, Richard Gere's character, Ike Graham, describes a few mythological man-eaters in a newspaper column and then cites one human one, Julia Roberts' Maggie Carpenter, who, leaves multiple men standing at the altar. So that great use there. And then in 2006, the song and its subject matter were adapted and somewhat reinterpreted by Nelly Furtado for her own song, Maneater. It's also sampled by the Ying Yang Twins on their hit Dangerous. A cover of the song is also used as the theme of the pilot episode of the Adult Swim show Lucy, the Daughter of the Devil.
Oh, here she comes, she's a man-eater.
And then that classic episode of Will and Grace where Hall & Oates showed up during Grace's wedding to James, singing Maneater as she walked down the aisle.
Actually, it's Oates and Hall now. Yeah, every 25 years we flip it.
There's also in the Ballad of Gay Tony, that episode of the Xbox 360 exclusive video game Grand Theft Auto episodes from Liberty City. It's part of the Vice City FM radio station.
Oh, here she comes. She's a man-eater.
I need to do an episode on Vice City on the radio stations. Let me know if you'd like to see that. There was also a lawsuit. In November 2008, Hall & Oates spawned legal action against their music publisher, Warner Chappell Music. An unidentified singer-songwriter was alleged to have used Maneater in a 2006 recording, infringing copyright, and by failing to sue for copyright infringement, Warner Chappell Music were alleged to have breached their contract with Daryl Hall and John Oates. You know, it's just, Maneater has one of the most memorable lyrics from a pop song from that beautiful decade. I mean, they were actually part of the vernacular back in the day, back in the 80s. I remember friends saying, watch out, she'll chew you up. She's a man-eater, right? Only 80s kids will understand. And the instrumentation, I mean, that Charlie DeChant sax solo is one of the best of all time. And can't forget G.E. Smith played the guitar on it. He was in the music video. G.E. Smith was, of course, the dude that was always jamming when Saturday Night Live went to a commercial break. Oh, and the model/actress that inspired John Oates to imagine that iconic line, you know, was cussing up a storm and telling dirty jokes until you smiled. Sorry, Billy Joel reference there.
Told you dirty jokes until you smile.
It was none other than 80s vixen, Weird Science alumni, Kelly LeBrock. I don't think Hall & Oates could have talked us out of that one.
So, what would you little maniacs like to do first?
Make sure to leave us a comment about everybody's favorite duo, Daryl Hall and John Oates. We pray they get back together. But what are your memories of this #1 smash and the other songs that were discussed by John Oates? Oh man, just hit makers all across the board. Let's have a great discussion and celebration of the music of Daryl Hall and John Oates. If you like our content, we invite you to subscribe below. We'd love to have you as part of our community. Until next time, 3 chords. Have the drink, my friends.